Alright, we're going to go ahead and get started. Today we're talking about how to optimize or increase your metabolism, as well as we're going to discuss fat loss and how it actually works. So, disclaimer, I'm not a medical doctor, I'm not your doctor. This is for educational purposes only. Now, I do have, however, about 10 years of competitive bodybuilding experience, and so I know a thing or two about fat loss and also about how to maintain muscle mass. These are all the shows that I've done in the state of Georgia. There I am. All right. So let's start off. We're going to ask the question just generally for everyone here. What is your definition of good nutrition? What would you say?
Watching your calories.
Hey, that's a pretty good definition. That's not too far off from where we're headed. So there's a thing called precision nutrition. It's the #1 rated certification in the world. That's how I got certified. Been featured in all these different places, Nike, New York Times. This is their definition of good nutrition. The ability to control your energy balance, okay? Or to control your weight, meaning if you plan to lose a pound and you do that while retaining muscle mass, that by definition is good nutrition. Regardless of your emotions surrounding your food choices, whether you think you did good or you think you did bad, what only matters is what you actually did, right? A lot of this is like psychological. So these are the terms we'll be using: caloric surplus versus caloric deficit. When you consume more than you burn off, you're in a surplus. This is not necessarily just being sedentary. You could be working out and still be eating too much for what your metabolism is and still gain fat. The deficit is when you burn off more than you consume, which is kind of hard to do, but that's the only way to achieve fat loss. So, calories in, calories out. This is just kind of shows you what it looks like. Alright, so the one on the top is where we lose weight because our calories burned are greater than our calories consumed. Does that kind of make sense? All right, so that's the foundation for all nutrition, is the energy balance and how calories work. To intake higher calories while maintaining a healthy body fat percentage, is what happens when you increase your metabolism. Okay. So anybody can lose weight, anybody can get lean, but can you increase your metabolism, right, to become a fat burning machine long term? Because I'll just be frank with you, 90% of, let's say, what is it? 90, 80, no, yeah, I think it's like 80 or 90% of fat loss goals, people don't even reach those goals. And out of 50% of those, they gain back more than they started with. So losing weight in itself is not the solution. It's part of the solution, but keeping it off is the hard part, right? #1, so things that affect your metabolism. Have you ever wondered, what determines my metabolism? Is that born this way? Is it just stuck? What about apple cider vinegar? What about this? What about that? Well, exercise activity thermogenesis, #1, is how many calories you burn. That's why you hire a trainer to make you burn calories, right? But exercise on its own is not enough to actually burn off enough weight to sustain fat loss. Okay, so which leads me to the next statement, which is that you have to have some sort of caloric restriction. You have to stop eating as much in order to lose weight, right? So TEF, the most important one, this is the second aspect of about 4 things we're talking about. #1 is exercise. #2 is your TEF, your thermic effect of food. Protein is up to 30% thermogenic, which is a lot. Okay, that's like a third of the calorie that you can just consume doesn't even count because it's thermogenic. Carbs and fats is 6 to 8% thermogenic. So the most fat-burning food that exists is protein. Because macros contain calories, the more that you eat, the more thermogenesis comes from your food. If you ate 10,000 calories in one day, your thermogenic effect, you would burn off half of that. Right? So it's not what you do every once in a while that makes a big difference. It's what you do consistently every day that adds up over time. Eat adequate protein is pretty much the main way you can maximize your thermic effect of food, is to maximize the amount of protein you're eating. Next, the third one is NEAT, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. This is what we're doing right now. Okay, we're not sleeping, we're not working out, we're talking, we're doom scrolling, we're fidgeting, we're awake. Well, the only way you could positively affect this aspect of your metabolism, because there's 4 categories in your metabolism, is to just jack up a lot of caffeine and make you hyper and all that, stimulants. But that's not really healthy. It's not good for your heart, is it? So a lot of people will market caffeine as a fat burner. It is not. It will speed up your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, but it won't actually do much in the area of burning fat. Your last one, but not least, is your resting metabolism. And this is the one that every trainer tries to convince you need to build more muscle because you can burn more calories at rest. And it's true, you can. But can you put on 10 pounds of muscle overnight? No. It takes like a year of training to make a significant difference. So, the only way you can really maximize this is to build more muscle. So, all of these combined equals your total daily energy expenditure. And at the end of the day, all you can do is eat more protein, train harder than last time, build as much muscle as possible, and get younger. Except you can't do that. Right? So, muscle is the organ of longevity. Having muscle mass will make you live longer tremendously. How does age affect metabolism? So a lot of people in their 40s and 50s, they might make the excuse of, well, my metabolism is slowing down, so it gets harder as you get older. No, it doesn't. Studies have shown that your resting metabolism does not change from 20 to 60. For 40 years, you have the same metabolism. After age 60, it slows down by 1% each year. This is usually due to inactivity, which causes sarcopenia. A lot of people, they mentally lose the fight. They don't have the same bulldog mentality they had when they were in high school, right? So they don't train because they just lose it. I don't know, they lose motivation. So no, you're not gaining weight because you're getting older. New research shows that metabolism doesn't actually slow down with age. Okay. Study suggests the biggest predictor of your metabolic rate isn't your age, it's the amount of muscle you have. Muscle mass declines 3 to 8% per decade after age 30 if you're not doing anything to maintain it. Now, what is actually required to maintain muscle mass is only 3 sets per week per muscle group. That's nothing. That's a waste of gas. To drive here and do 3 sets and go home is a waste of gas. The average workout is at least 10 sets, right? That make it worth your while. Go home, get a good sweat. But you're not here to maintain, you're here to build muscle, right? So every program is going to design about 8 to 12 sets per muscle per week. When you lose muscle, you become more insulin resistant, okay? The best thing for your defense against sugar is muscle mass. Your metabolic function declines, you struggle with blood sugar management, fatigue, increased hunger, using stored energy, fat for fuel. Okay, and that came from dynamic personal training at the bottom. I did not even come up with this. This is from Lifetime, but it is accurate. Muscle gain in a large surplus, it is a large surplus of like 500 calories necessary for gaining muscle, which is what a lot of people think of when they think of bulking. One study showed no. Between 2 groups, one eating close to maintenance calories, the other was in a 500 calorie surplus. The difference in muscle gain was insignificant. However, strength went up. Why? Because the type of strength training required to actually improve your 1 rep max requires a lot of carbohydrates. So if you're not going very heavy, you don't need a lot of carbs. Okay. Maintenance or slight surplus is ideal for muscle gain. You can even build muscle in a deficit while you burn fat. It's hard, you gotta train hard, it is possible. So that's like 0 to 300 calorie surplus. Okay. I don't want to lean bulk. Then you won't build muscle as optimally as you would like. Now, it is true for some beginners. Let's say you haven't worked out in a few years. You want to start to build muscle, lean out. You will make significant progress if you do everything the right way. A lot quicker than, let's say, the average person who's been doing it for years, because you're just more fresh. You're more new to it, okay? Your body hasn't been through that stress yet. But you will always lose muscle on a cut, and and you always gain fat on a bulk. But the benefit outweighs the negative. And if I could just make this clear, any bodybuilder that steps on a stage, they had to bulk up and then they had to cut down. It's all an illusion to look that way on stage. They didn't just have one phase, it was multiple phases. Your idea of maintenance will cost you muscle long term. Okay, this is where a lot of people will say, well, I just want to eat maintenance calories. Can I just maintain what I have? No, you will inevitably go backwards, because metabolically, whatever you deem as whatever you're consistent at will become the new maintenance. I'm talking about your metabolism. I mean, if I tell you, I know I'm talking a lot, but hear me out. If I tell you to eat 1,600 calories and your maintenance is 2,000, if you stay at 1,600 for a year, 1,600 is no longer a deficit. It is now your maintenance calories because of metabolic adaptation. Right? So, does that kind of make sense, what I just said? Yeah. Is it possible to build too much muscle naturally, and why? No. Muscle development has its limits based on genetic. You have like chromosomes in your body, that certain markers that tell your body to stop growing, which is a lot of it's related to genetics as far as bone structure and insertions, muscle insertions. But your fat-free mass index is a list of a range of like 200 people from the 1940s. This is before steroids. So they pretty much figured out what's possible naturally as far as how much muscle mass can you put on. So 25 is considered the limit for how big and lean one can be at the same time naturally. So this is an actual FFMI calculator. This is not body fat. This is not muscle mass. It is a correlation between the two. So let's say you weigh 175 pounds, 5'11", 15% body fat. That puts you right at around 21. You see at the bottom there, 21. That triangle is where you fit if you had these stats. Now, let's say you work out a little bit longer. Maybe you get to 22 one day. If you ever hit 22, you look like you lift. 23, you have great genetics. 24, you might be on steroids. So they figure if you're 25 or above, it's unlikely that you're natural. Okay? So this is important to kind of gauge, like, does a person need to build muscle, or do they need to just kind of focus more on fat loss, right? So there's a limit. It might take you 15 to 20 years of consistency to get there. I've been training for 18 years consistently, 5 days a week, and I'm pretty darn close to my limit, although I continue to progress and hit PRs and build more muscle mass. But it's always work. It's always uphill. How to actually increase your metabolism? Well, embracing a reverse diet will help. So let's say you lose all the weight that you set out to lose, and you're like, I'm done with the diet. No more. You see, a diet shouldn't last forever. It should just last long enough to actually reach the goal. So you start increasing your calories using what's called a reverse diet. Slowly, maybe 50 calories per week. The goal in a reverse diet is not to build muscle. It's not even to burn fat or even to stay lean. The primary goal is to slowly restore your metabolism to a higher rate. Meaning, now my body can function and exist off of 2,800 calories instead of 1,800, right? So that's actually how you increase your metabolism. So it's not set in stone. a lot of it has to do with time itself. Give yourself time to allow the calories to take effect in your body. So how long should I do this for? Well, until you stop gaining weight, which means if you take the average person, once they get lean, you just indefinitely increase their calories from like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. Eventually they will stop gaining weight, and it doesn't matter if you just give them 5,000 or 8,000 calories a day, because their weight will eventually become linear. Okay? What I mean by that, like if you actually look at an exponential graph, it goes up and then it kind of trails off. That trailing off, that plateauing, that's when you stop reverse dieting. Right? This is an anecdote. This is my personal history. My maintenance went from around 2,900 to around 3,400 to 3,800 calories in my off season while maintaining my weight. How is it possible to not gain weight by adding? I thought it was calories in, calories out, because of this thing called metabolic adaptation. If we can understand metabolic adaptation, we understand how to increase our metabolism. Okay, this is a fat loss pyramid. We're going to go through it real slow. Sustainability and adherence. This is the number one most important thing when it comes to a diet. Most diets are so hard and rigid and strict, you couldn't even last a week on them, let alone 16 weeks. Okay? So it has to be doable. If you love peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, but you're not allowed to eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches on your diet, guess what you're gonna binge on when you get really hungry? You're gonna eat peanut butter and jelly sandwich because it's the one thing you restricted the hardest. And it's a lot of it is psychological, but a lot of it is physiological as well. You have to plan ahead for when you're going to be hungry. The next most important thing is caloric deficit. Okay? What good is it if you adhere to a diet, but you're never really in a deficit? You're not losing 1 pound every week like you're supposed to, right? So you got to make sure you're in a deficit. As a coach, my number one priority for fat loss is to make sure that you stay in a caloric deficit. Right? Exercise. Boom. Didn't think we'd forget about that one. Exercise is important, but it's not as important as being in a caloric deficit. Okay, but the main driver of being in a caloric deficit is exercise. The next one is self-monitoring. What the heck is that? That means you're tracking what you're doing. You're tracking your calories, you're stepping on a scale, you're tracking your workouts. Some form of building intrinsic motivation, which is, I've come this far, I might as well keep on going. That's kind of the motivating factor behind it. And because a lot of this goes back to sustainability, you need motivation to push through. But most of motivation comes from self-monitoring. If you don't track anything, you'll get discouraged a lot easier. Protein and fiber. That's probably the most important thing nutritionally when you're on a diet. You could go keto, you could go Whole30, you could go paleo. At the end of the day, you gotta have high protein and you gotta have fiber. If you get rid of protein, you're gonna lose all your muscle mass and your health is gonna go backwards. So protein is a must. Then carbs and fats take a back seat. Not as important as protein and fiber. Why? Because carbs and fat macros are interchangeable. Well, I could have peanut butter or I could have a bag of chips. Well, peanut butter is 190 calories, bag of chips is 190 calories. Which is a better choice? Am I gonna build more muscle and be leaner by eating peanut butter over a bag of chips? No. It's the same amount of calories. One is more carb heavy, one is more fat heavy. A calorie is a calorie. So now that we know that, why don't we just track flexibly and forget about carbs and fats a little bit. Keep them as a main guideline, but just track your protein and your calories. If you just track your protein and your calories, you would make good success. Alright. Last one is supplements. Supplements does not determine fat loss, but it does treat you as a human being, right? I want to make you as comfortable as possible while losing weight. I'm going to give you supplements because if I give you ashwagandha, it's going to lower your cortisol, right? If I give you creatine, it's going to make you hold on to more water. If I give you magnesium, it's going to help you sleep better during this phase. Going back to adherence, one study showed that women reported to track calories up to 70% inaccurately. So this right here, we're talking about adherence. Not trying to be sex bias or whatever, gender bias, but women have a harder time tracking calories than men, according to a lot of studies. So don't track inaccurately, right? Let's see, go into maintenance immediately. So yeah, let's just think about it logically. You finish the diet, you lost 30 to 100 pounds, whatever. What do you do now? Do you just exist on low calories? No, you can't do that. You can either go into maintenance calories immediately, which is not recommended. This will put you in a huge surplus unintentionally, right? Because metabolism is not ready for that yet. You can do whatever you want. You can eat intuitively, also a bad idea. You'll end up inevitably overeating. You can reverse diet, which most of the time this is the best choice, especially for a longer diet, like anything longer than 10 weeks, like a real diet. I call 6 to 10 weeks about like a mini cut. 12 to 20 weeks is like a longer diet. You can keep dieting because you really haven't hit your goal yet. Some people do that. You're like, I'm done dieting. I'm like, no, you're not. Keep going. And then recovery diet, near starvation, you need calories quick. That's if you're near death and you're like super lean, like low, like single digit body fat. This really only applies to competitors in bodybuilding, but they would need a large boost, and a lot of them do that. They binge and they recover quickly, and it's amazing because the metabolism will recover quickly too, but they gain a lot of fat. So the best option is the reverse diet. I don't want to overload you with too much information, so I'm going to kind of skip ahead. Here's the main thing. Dieting is controlled starvation. You'll never feel comfortable on a diet. You can take supplements to help you and all that kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, you're going to be a little bit hungry. Okay? Starve the fat, feed the muscle by eating protein. So the good nutrition, ability to control energy balance, we talked about that. Never lose more than 1% of your body weight per week. So if I weigh 200 pounds, I should never lose more than 2 pounds per week. This will result in losing muscle. That's a lot easier to do than you think. Especially if you don't sleep good one night, and you step on the in-body, you're like, wow, I just lost 3 pounds of muscle overnight. How is that possible? It's because you didn't sleep well or you didn't eat enough protein. Alright, we're going to talk about protein. A lot of people have in their mindset, they think, well, clean versus dirty, inorganic versus non-organic, or all these peripheral things that don't matter. If you're going to talk about the quality of a protein, you need to be looking at the amino acid profile, okay? Which leucine is particularly important for building muscle because it's actually the amino acid that triggers muscle protein synthesis. So if you eat a vegan diet, you're cutting your leucine content in half. You're getting half the amount of leucine that you should be eating by not eating animal-based protein. Dairy and whey, or dairy, which is whey particularly, and egg white protein are the richest sources of leucine, okay? So try to eat it every day. And look, if you eat a regular egg, you're eating some egg whites in there. So eggs are like one of the best protein you can eat. Highest quality on the planet. You can't say the same for bacon or pork or ground turkey or even chicken or even fish for that matter. But whey and eggs, if you think of, I don't want to go too deep on this, but if God created a little egg, and he wants the nutrient, it's the most nutrient-packed thing on the planet. It's an egg, or what does that baby eat? It eats milk, which is where you get whey protein. So all goes back to birth. Protein doesn't just build muscle, it supports fat loss. Protein is highly satiating. and not getting enough will cause hunger cravings. This sounds like so obvious, but so many people don't listen to their body. They're like starving, they're craving sugar, they don't know why. It's because they're not eating enough protein. Okay, well, how much protein do I need? We'll talk about that in a minute. 4 calories per gram is what protein is. And it's very difficult to get fat eating protein. It's actually almost impossible unless you're eating 10,000 calories, which nobody can eat that. So it's extremely satiating. All about carbs, okay? A healthy individual should be able to ingest a high carb diet. You were designed to burn through carbs pretty quick, okay? Carbohydrates contribute to glycogen, which is 3 parts water, 1 part carbohydrate. When you eat a higher amount of carbs and lower fat diet, you end up eating more fiber, less saturated fat, which contributes to high cholesterol. And fiber actually binds the cholesterol and excretes it out the body. You end up with more food volume, meaning you're not as hungry all the time. You end up getting more vegetables and fruit, which are carbs, more readily available glycogen, and more energy. Now, what are you going to do with all that energy? You better be training with that energy, because if you want to turn it into muscle, you got to tear down muscle fibers. 2% of fat tissue came from carbohydrates, according to one study. Now, honestly, would you say that according to the internet, most people would say that carbs causes fat gain? That isn't an accurate statement. The truth is that very little fat is actually coming from carbohydrates. However, if you overeat with any kind of calorie, if your surplus of calories is you're eating 5,000 calories a day, it almost doesn't matter how many fats or carbs you eat. You will end up storing fat. You have to understand the mechanism. People will make outrageous claims. They will say, well, this does that, that does this, and there's no mechanism scientifically to explain what they just said. Neuroglucogenesis is a real thing, which is, where you basically convert fat into glycogen, but I digress. Carbs are the body's primary source of actual ATP energy. These are all good things. We should not be demonizing carbs. We should be embracing carbohydrates. But we might need to lower our fats to make room for the carbs, right? So a lot of what people slam against carbs falls under the category of hyperpalatable foods like pizza, ice cream, French fries, pasta. People say, well, that's all carbs. No, that's carbs plus fats plus salt plus makes it taste yummy and all that kind of stuff. So they contain carbs, okay? But if I gave you a bowl of grits and I said, I want you to eat 10 servings of grits, you would be sick of carbs. You would not want to eat that much. And that would be a very clean meal with, as long as there's protein in there. But nobody does that because they want to eat what tastes good. Okay. Glycogen is, we talked about that. Carbs get processed the same. Yeah. So a lot of people try to demonize sugar, which is a carbohydrate. And they say that sugar will make you fat, but it's not true. Sugar can make you more hungry, for sure, but if you eat enough protein, sugar is not really the enemy. Okay? Unless you're diabetic, you don't need to be restricting or even counting how many grams of sugar you're eating. It doesn't matter. What matters is your overall calories, which correlates to energy balance. Are you in a surplus or a deficit? Because you can be in a deficit and eat sugar in moderation and still actually burn fat and become healthier. You could potentially even reverse pre-diabetes by just simply losing the weight. But we put so much focus and emphasis on the food and not on ourselves to be disciplined enough to responsibly handle those calories, right? So the 3 types of carbs there are is fiber, which is if you want to live a long time, they say you can live up to 9 years longer by just eating more fiber, which is amazing because they don't say that about anything else but just fiber, which is like your fruits, your vegetables, your legumes and sprouted grains and all that. Sugar which is fructose, sucrose, glucose, galactose, maltose, anything with an ose on the end. That's all sugar, and it's still necessary that you eat it. Okay, you may say, well, it's not essential. You don't have to eat it. Yeah, but you can't go longer than 2 years without eating sugar. You eventually do need sugar. It's not indefinite. Starch, any vegetable or non-sugar gram of carbs. Okay, so we're talking vegetables, potatoes. True or false? Pasta is a starch. What? False. It is not a starch. It is made of starch. It's actually, wheat is a starch, which you turn wheat into pasta, right? So potato is an actual vegetable that you grow out of the ground. All I'm saying is pasta is like ice cream. It's just a created thing that we've created. You can't grow it or shoot it. It's not a whole food. Okay. In my opinion, the only people who should be actively avoiding carbs are diabetics or they have some sort of underlying condition. Now, it is true that too much of anything can cause inflammation. Again, the internet will usually try to blame a certain food like gluten or sugar for causing inflammation, but that's just not true. Because if you had 10,000 calories of anything, I don't care if it's broccoli, you're going to incur inflammation. Okay. Now, the more fat that you eat, the more fat you store. This is actually true. That makes no sense then to be doing a ketogenic diet where you eat a ton of fat just to eat more fat. Ketosis is not a requirement. Ketosis is not a requirement for fat metabolism. All right? So, because why? Because the more fat you eat, the more fat you store. There's always a difference between fat burning and fat loss. People will make claims. They will use the verbiage in their videos on YouTube and on the ads you see. Well, this is the most fat-burning food. This is the most fat-burning exercise. Whoopity-doo, I'm burning fat right now. I don't need that. What you need is to achieve fat loss by burning more than you're taking in, which can only be achieved by caloric restriction in the case of fat loss. Fats will always taste good. That's why we add butter and oil and a lot of Italian foods, right? I'm French, so French do that too. 3,500 calories equal to 1 pound of fat storage. So if your goal is to lose 1 pound per week, just divide 3,500 into 7 days. That gives you a 500 calorie deficit. 9 calories per gram. That's pretty calorically dense. So, try to measure 120 calories of olive oil. That's exactly 1 tablespoon.
That was probably the biggest shock for me, by the way.
Yeah.
Like when I used to cook before tracking my calories.
Absolutely. You hear a lot of people talk about either oil or peanut butter or something like that.
Yeah.
To make that analogy. Fats can be satiating, but are easy to overeat. It is possible for someone to lose weight on a keto diet. Why? Because fats are very satiating. But there's usually not enough protein on that diet to make it worth your while. Keto is like 80% fat, 10% protein, and no percent carbs. Yeah. Controlling energy balance means controlling your weight. Everybody should be shifting in one direction or the other. I don't believe in maintenance. It's against my religion, right? Because your metabolism reacts so fast. Within 3 weeks, it'll adapt to whatever you're doing. So, strategies you should not do to increase your metabolism. Okay. So these don't work. Okay. Eating more meals throughout the day exclusively. Okay, exclusively, because if you eat enough protein, then it works. You actually do speed up your thermogenic effect of food if you eat protein but it doesn't matter if you eat 1 meal a day or 6 meals a day, technically, if you hit your protein.
I do remember asking you this question, but I don't remember the response. In the morning, that day, what is the best thing you can do to boost your metabolism?
High protein breakfast. So 30 to 40 grams. I was just talking about this with one of my other people because 25 might be okay, but usually for me at least 30 to 40 is the sweet spot. And you're not as hungry for the next 4 hours, especially if you eat something that's like eggs. If you cook it, it takes up space.
Okay. Let's say not food,
So spicy food actually does act as an appetite suppressant. I would say that most spicy food tastes really good, so it's not really a good strategy. But apple cider vinegar does speed up digestion, doesn't speed up your metabolism. You ever heard of carb blockers? They'll sell you these white kidney bean extract in a pill form, and you take it, and it literally cements white kidney bean on the inside of your stomach so you're not as hungry. And it claims to block carbs, but it's completely pseudoscience. Yeah, it's a real thing. Fat burners, we talked about that. Excessive cardio. This is a big mistake a lot of people make in the gym. Not everybody, but some people, that's all they do is cardio. Appetite suppressants do not speed up your metabolism. So Ozempic is a form of an appetite suppressant, which can be very helpful for a lot of people. It is thought to be kind of a cure, but now they're finding symptoms of like people going blind that are taking it.
Is Ozempic a GLP-1 or is that
yes,
different?
it is. It's the brand name. Yep, most common. There's no scientific definition of clean eating. All your body recognizes macros. It is true that macros are important. You don't want to be deficient in any mineral or vitamin, but macros are going to have a far bigger impact on your health, the way you look, the way you feel, your blood markers. And I even talked about how you don't even have to really track your carbs and your fats, just your protein and your calories, So like eating more than 3 meals a day is actually what most people need to grow into as adults. Is they were taught as a kid, go to school, 3 meals a day. But if you want to hit 125 grams of protein, it's going to take you 5 meals to get there, on average. So a little bit, it's a moderately high protein intake. And when I was competing, I would talk to guys backstage at the bodybuilding shows, and they'd be like, yeah, I had like 250 grams of protein a day. And they're like 160 pounds. Is it bad for you? Not really. It just makes dieting really hard. And I would say it's bad for you that in the sense you're probably not getting enough fiber.
Too much protein isn't bad for you?
Not really. Because you would not be able to eat enough to make it bad for you. Like you would need like 1,000 grams of protein or something. Like it's not as bad for your kidneys as people claim. People that have kidney disease related to protein intake usually die within a few minutes of being born. Like you would know you would never be able to eat any protein your whole life. So I forget what it's called. It's not kidney disease, but it's a protein issue. Most everyone can improve the metabolism to a degree. Even if you just tweak a little bit here and there, you'll burn more calories.
It took me a while to get my meal planning right.
Yeah, and we didn't even talk about meal planning, but if your maintenance calories is 1,500 and you need to diet off 1,100 to lose fat, the end goal is to actually be able to diet off of like 1,700. So you want to improve year to year, because once you lose that initial fat, maybe 30 pounds, whatever, you want to make sure that you're improving, like have something, and this is the area you want to improve. So yo-yo dieting versus reverse dieting. A lot of people think, well, that's just yo-yo dieting, you're cutting, you're bulking, all that. But yo-yo dieting is when you lose weight so fast that your metabolism doesn't have a chance to catch up, and you end up losing a lot of muscle mass and it's like undoing your health. Reverse dieting is a slow, gradual, it's the timing of it. And if I just want to be completely honest, what I'm realizing now as I'm doing this reverse diet right now, it has a lot more to do with the amount of time you're in a surplus than the actual speed of the increase. Like just giving your body time in a surplus will heal the body. So some competitors, they'll binge eat and gain 30 pounds in a week, but it's okay. They can kind of recover and do it all over again. I don't recommend it because it's a lot harder that way. But anyway, achieving fat loss means you're doing more work with less fuel, which will always be hard. There's no magic pill. Ozempic is the closest thing to a magic pill, but even then, you still got to work out to keep your muscle. And if you notice, people that lose weight on Ozempic, that don't work out, they're like super stringy and skinny. That's not healthy. Less fuel calories over time means less energy. Your body will become more efficient with calories, which is actually a bad thing. Okay? Oh, my body's becoming more efficient. Yay. So yeah, keep it like a sprint, because whether or not you're in a competition for fat loss, you still have a time limit on this thing, right? Because your metabolism can only go for so long before you just get so hungry and irritable that you just tap out, right? So treat it like a sprint. So more muscle mass equals less dieting. Adding muscle is the only way significantly. We already mentioned that. All right, so recommended protein intake. For someone with 150 pounds at 20% body fat, you would do this little formula right here, and they would end up around 130 grams per protein. Now, the average trainer will actually tell you need to eat 150 grams of protein, because that's how much you weigh. No. What I will say is maybe a more simplistic. If I could simplify this, let's say the person wants to weigh 130 pounds, then I would say 1 gram per pound of goal body weight is actually not a bad idea. And it works even on the upswing. If you want to gain weight, you still would actually increase your protein. You can. I mean, there's some things are flexible like that. So, just, eating intuitively, it's always a temptation. Why do I have to track my calories? Well, you're gonna overeat a little bit. There was a registered dietitians they found to be off up to about 300 calories a day. So yeah, the body likes consistency. So talk about cardio. Cardio is a helpful tool for achieving fat loss, but it's one of the last variables to consider. Don't run out of options. What I mean by that is, first you restrict calories, then maybe you think about increasing volume with training, then you'll hit a plateau there or a wall, then do cardio, and then maybe, if you really feel like you're holding on to water, you can do diuretics and stuff like that, like asparagus. But cardio, it's a good idea generally not to do cardio when you start fat loss goal. So try slowly increasing it. There's only really 2 viable ways to do it, either LISS or HIIT, which is low intensity steady state, like a Stairmaster, or HIIT, which is like sprints. A lot of people think HIIT is better. I don't, because it's more demanding, it's more taxing, and if you're actually in a deficit, you don't want to do demanding things. Low intensity steady state cardio. It will burn less calories, but the type of calorie that it burns is primarily fat. If you only sprint, you're burning up a lot of carbs. Yeah. The main thing to do, consider how great a deficit are you in. Yeah. So back in the 90s, when they didn't have all this science to back things up, they thought cardio equals muscle loss. It would actually hurt you as far as muscle loss. But the only reason that was true was because of the deficit. If the deficit's too big, remember we talk about don't lose more than 1% of your body weight per week. That's where you lose muscle. So it's not necessarily the cardio, it's just the deficit that you're in. Right? What's the difference between fat burning? We talked about that. Yeah. Fat loss relates to the energy balance. So it's hard, you guys, But resistance only. Okay, this is a quiz. One study compared 3 groups: resistance only, cardio only, or resistance and cardio combined. Looking primarily at fat loss, which group do you think outperformed? What do you think? C. That's what I thought initially, but it's actually A. Resistance only. Because there is a fatigue factor with cardio, especially if you're not managing it at the right times. Maybe you're doing it beforehand or after or whatever, but And a lot of people even think that fasted cardio is the way to go. There's a lot of pro bodybuilders that are still doing fasted cardio, even though the evidence shows that it's actually the same as doing it with food on your stomach. Because what you'll do is you'll burn up glycogen stores, like, the moment you stop doing cardio fasted and you go eat lunch, that's actually breakfast, and you start storing fat again. So as long as the overall calories are the same. Okay. MyFitnessPal is a really good tool. I've been tracking for almost 1,000 days. So yay. It's like 976 or something like that. Like a month away. But I've taken breaks and stuff. But I've actually been tracking for 12 years. Like almost every day. So the biggest thing is to make really good progress. When I say really good progress, I mean, you look at a bodybuilder on stage, they had to tweak it exactly to where they would keep all their muscle but burn all their fat. And they'd have to make minor adjustments week after week after week with their calories in order to get that look. And you can't make minor adjustments if you're not consistent, And so intrinsic motivation is really good, because I can say I've been tracking for almost 1,000 years, whatever, and it makes me feel good about it, right? I know where I came from.
This is probably a good point to ask my other question.
Yeah.
Because I'm definitely guilty of this, not anymore. So don't get mad at me.
Yeah.
But if you overeat one day, can you undereat the next?
No. You have to tell yourself to have amnesia. I'm telling you, because
so every day is a reset.
it will derail you for the rest of the week if you're that hungry, because now you're under eating. So if you overeat for one day, that's one mistake. If you undereat the next day, that's two mistakes. Yeah.
So 2 mistakes.
Yeah, so just get it at the right level as often as you can. Yep. So yeah. This is very boring, but it's so practical. Eat high protein pretty much all the time. 4 to 5 times a day. If you're hungry, it means you need protein. Okay, it doesn't mean you need food, it means you need protein. All right? These are some good sources. Cottage cheese. I'm not a big fan of cottage cheese. I really like egg whites, protein powder, Greek yogurt, chicken. I don't really do deli anything. I don't do any canned food either. I don't do any pork unless it's like bacon and I just want to go for it. I eat a lot of beef. I don't really eat much turkey.
Turkey bacon isn't really that bad, but you gotta cook it so that you brown it. If you don't brown the turkey bacon, you don't have any taste.
But you can just say the same thing about burgers. It's like, if you don't get that gristle effect, and you end up getting more carcinogenic food when you gristle stuff.
Yeah.
It's called the Maillard effect. It's the fat that cooks a certain way. It makes it taste like that. Concentrate is protein. So if you need some protein, get it from Lifetime. 5% lactose. It's a little bit cheaper to get the concentrate. It's very high in leucine. You got isolate, which is 1% lactose. So if you have lactose intolerant, people will say, "Well, I just need to eat vegan." Well, no. Try the isolate first. Okay. Peptides for collagen. Good for joint, hair, skin, and nails.
Is collagen actually good?
It's okay. Whey is better, and I don't believe all the hype surrounding it as far as you can't build hair, skin, and nails without it. You absolutely can on a high protein diet, regardless of the source of protein. A lot of studies have shown that, and so it's kind of a mixed bag as far as research out there. But SMART goal: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. Every time you finish a goal or start a goal, you need to take a look at this and think about what you're doing. And write it down. You're more likely to succeed at a goal when you write it down. These are some body fat percentages. I thought this was actually pretty decent. Nobody comes to the gym to be average, so you want to be at least fitness level, But that's where those numbers lie.